So I know there's about a 15-second delay. And hello, everybody! Just testing the delay there with the funny waves.
Hello, everybody. I don't have YouTube open, so I can't test if you can hear me or how many people there are, or if you're talking. Michael's in charge of that today.
I haven't actually scrolled down to see if you're making noise. It does appear that you're making noise.
Can they hear my fans?
They are your fans. Of course they can hear. Good evening, everybody. Tonight is a special night. Tonight is the night where Jan is going to show us Peter Piper's perfect...
Pretty Particle Party.
Yeah, that one.
Yes, because Peter Piper picked a peck of pretty particles.
But if Peter Piper picked a peck of pretty particles...
We were trying that just before the stream, but we just couldn't get it.
Welcome. That's the sound test. Hello, Roderick. Hello, Todd. How are you doing?
Yeah, so you may notice we're slightly slow, which does tend to happen most Mondays. I think what happens is we go through the weekend and Monday comes, blah, blah. But today, it's not actually because of lack of sleep, at least not in my case. No. It's because my house has become an oven.
In fact,
but yeah, let me know if my fans are too loud. Let me know if you can't hear me very well, or if I'm too loud.
I mean, you're quiet to me, but I had turned my headphones down. That's my gem this week. The volume control makes LAN louder.
What was the one you did last week? Just before the stream? You were like, okay, yeah, the levels are good. And we're ready to... Oh, you're twice as loud when I have two headphones on.
I think that was on the stream, not before. No one can hear the fans and to put them in his perfect project.
Fantastic. All right, so today we're going to play with particles in Godot 3. And I'm going to be playing probably primarily in 2D and then show what changes you need to do in 3D. Or if you guys prefer, we can do maybe 3D. It's mostly the same. But first, let's share a screen and I'll show you what I've prepared.
Awesome.
So, entire screen, that one. Good. So you should be seeing my screen.
I can see your screen. It's black for the moment, and then it'll move over.
So I have a bunch of sprites I brought in. Mostly I've got the Canopy particles because they're CC0 and everyone should have them. I've also got some that I made for the particle pack we have on our site. And I've made a couple of extra ones to play with. But first thing I'm going to do is make a 2D scene. And I don't need to call anything, so we don't need to save this. I'm just going to open a particle 2D and talk through the first steps. The first thing I want to do is you're going to go to process material, and you're going to pick your process material. Now today, actually, no, no, I will just move the mic over here. We're going to be dealing with particle materials. I'm not very good at shaders, so that's what we're not going to do with shaders. And you'll notice nothing has happened. Now in 2D, the reason for that is you need a texture. So what we're going to do is bring in a circle. It's a nice starting point. So this is just a soft circle I've made. And let's walk through the very basics before we start playing with things. So, is it emitting? On or off, right? How many particles do you want on screen at the same time? So, the way to think about particles is they're points in space that have either sprites or geometry that follow rules. And they're designed really to mimic pretty chaotic systems or chemistry systems that are quite hard to type in, but with some simple rules, the renderer can do it for you. So, if I open time, we've got the lifetime. How long does each particle last? So let's say they last 10 seconds. And because we can only have 8 on the screen, they look like they're behaving very differently. They actually behave the same way. One shot, they'll fire once and then stop emitting. In this case, for a second. Pre-process, how many seconds will it simulate running before it does anything? So if I do it for 1 second, in theory, it should do almost nothing. Right? Because it's just fading away. Speed scale, I've done all my stuff, but I wanted to go faster because of reasons. So if you wanted your particle to go faster in code, that's what you would use. Explosiveness. Okay, so right now, they're all coming on at a time. Let's turn... Oh, I've got one shot on. Let's put on explosiveness, and they all get... if explosiveness is 1, they're all fired at the same time, not sequentially.
Ah, cool.
But what we can do is we can put that halfway down and they're sort of clumped together, right? So that's the thing we can play with. There's also randomness. Now, this is only the randomness of the lifetime. So if I put this to here, and let's just increase lifetime to 5, anywhere between 0 and 5 seconds is what we're seeing. So you're seeing like little bits of changes. Now, right now, these aren't that interesting. So let's put these back to basics. Yes.
Good evening, Gerard. And I've got a question on that randomness. So is the randomness also not only the lifetime, but when it's generated, when it's spawned into the world?
This specifically is lifetime randomness. Now, most of the other parameters will have random things that you can say how random it is. You'll notice there's a slider between 0 and 1. It's not a Boolean.
Yeah.
So you don't have to have 100% random. That's fine. One more thing that's usual to think about is local coordinates. Now, what this means is if I move this, do they stay there? Or if I turn it off, are they trails? All right. So if you've got particles following something and you want them to leave a little dotted line or whatever it is, you'll want local coordinates on. So those are your important ones. Okay. So those are our very basics. Let's do some fun stuff. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go into my process material. If I wanted, I could do another particle after this one. I'm not going to mess with that, but that's a thing you can do. Okay, time, lifetime randomness. So that's the one you're talking about, right? That's how random is it? Yeah. Trail, to be honest, I barely use. This is more useful in Godot 4, where there are actually particle trails. But this is treat the previous particles like a trail, and then I could do things like how big they are and what size they are using modifiers. So if I increase that to 5, and I go to my size scale, I'm going to do a new curve texture. I click on it, and I'm going to say we're going to start at 1 and go down to 0, and you should see. Actually, it's quite hard to see this. There we go. You have to put your subdivide on, otherwise it doesn't work. You'll see that each subdivision is following a different point on this curve. Honestly, I don't usually use that, but it is a useful thing if you want to play with it. Here's the stuff that I think is much more useful. If we go down to emission, actually, first thing I'm going to do, let's turn off gravity. So right now, gravity is at 98. Why is it positive 98 to go down? Because we're in 2D. And in Godot in 2D, positive Y is down. So 0, 0 is the top left corner in 2D. The way to think of it is the monitor starts here and scans across.
That's not just in Godot. That is how 2D space is represented. Screen space is represented like that as well.
I'm talking about Godot, so that's what I am clarifying. Boop, let's put that over there. Okay, so we're now on the origin point, and if I go to emission shape, now right now we have points, right? But I can make this a sphere. Okay, we can't see anything because this is a 1 pixel sphere. Let's do a 100 pixel sphere. Didn't mean to do that. And let's change the lifetime to 1 second. And it's going to appear somewhere within a 100 pixel sphere. Let's do a 500 pixel sphere.
Nice. Okay. And because we're looking down on it as if it was 2D,
this is 2D.
Yeah.
But it's still called sphere. Like it should be called circle. But in 3D, this would be a sphere, and it's the same deal.
Yeah.
But it doesn't have to be a sphere. It could be a box. Now, remember, in 2D space, this 1 is 1 pixel. That's why you're not seeing anything. So let's say we want 100 by 100. And there's no point having a z-axis for this, so I'm not going to. But it's there. We've also got points. Now, for this, you're going to want to make a point texture, which is a little bit out of scope of what we're doing here. But it's basically going to take a straight line and use, I think it's the RGB value, but it might be the alpha value, and figure out where that is. Honestly, I never mess with that, but it is one of the things. Same with director points, but you've also got ring, which is kind of fun.
Donut.
Yep. In fact, let's go 1,000 and 500. And let's make this really obvious. I've got you a donut.
And the inner radius is 500 pixels and the outer is 1,000.
Correct.
Oh, that would make an awesome portal type.
Yeah, I mean, that's a good start to a portal. And we'll start making some fun things in a minute. I just want to go through some of the basics. So when I start messing around with them, it's not quite so like, why is he doing that? I've forgotten how to. Ow! Ah! Right. So we'll put that over there. I've been playing too much in Blender, and I keep trying to do like control and middle mouse button, and it's not working.
I have the exact problem when I go inside Godot.
I know, it's weird, isn't it? All right, where were we? We were in emission shapes. For now, let's go with point. All right, and we probably don't need 256. Other fun things. Direction. Now, I've got gravity off at the moment. Direction is which direction should it be going in and how much spread. Let's turn the spread to 0. And right now, you'll notice it's not moving. It knows that it should be moving to the right, but it isn't. To see it moving to the right, let's go down to initial velocity and pick a velocity of, let's say, 250. Now it's moving, but it's really jerky. And the reason it's jerky is the moment it's out of time, it despawns and the next one will spawn in. Now there's stuff we can do to make that look better in a minute.
So it's not actually jerky; it's an optical illusion because the last one's just dying. It's not fading out or shrinking to nothing.
If I put in not 23, if I put in 2, it's much more obvious, right? After the time has run out, and it's not the distance, it's just the time, the next one will spawn in.
You could literally animate some signs at this point, couldn't you?
You absolutely could. And if you're using a sprite sheet, you can use the animation thing here to pick which cell you want. So you can have like all kinds of moving stuff.
Oh, you can have it change at the like on the 4th iteration.
That's how we deal with the bubbles in not Tookie Bubble.
Nice.
The bubbly game. Yeah, Tookie Bubble.
Yeah.
When they pop, I've got one image with all 10 colors. It just picks the frame.
Yeah. Well, that's awesome.
Much easier. Okay, so we've got our initial velocity. Let's turn that back to 0. There's a few others. We've got angular velocity. How much is it going to spin? This is a circle. That's not going to help us. Let's change that to a different texture. Let's go to a square. Okay.
Oh, so it spins the particle, not its direction of movement.
Correct.
Got it.
So right now we have 8 squares on top of each other over 2 seconds. Not helpful. So if we go down to our angular velocity, and let's say I want an angular velocity of 10. Let's say I want an angular velocity of 500. Okay, find a nice even one. So already we're starting to get some fun effects. Now, again, we can randomize this depending on how chaotic you want. And we start getting something a little bit more organic, right? So there's already some fun stuff we can do just by playing with these. Then there's orbital velocity. Now, orbital velocity is probably not going to work here. Yeah, it's not going to work here because we're all at the same point. We're trying to orbit the point we're at. And if you're at that point, orbit is 0. So let's go back to our emission shape. By the way, once I've gone through all these, we will start playing around and making some fun stuff. This is just groundwork. Don't worry. This is not the whole thing. Where's my mission shape? Let's go to sphere. And let's put you at 100. Oh, that's painful.
It's rather scatty, isn't it?
I think my orbit velocity is way too high. There we go.
Nice.
And again, you can randomize it. Now, one thing you'll have noticed with all of these, and this is true for those, is we have a curve. We can go to a curve texture, and instead of having a velocity of 1, we can say my minimum value is 0, my max is 2. I want you to start by not moving. I want you to orbit, and then I want you to stop.
Nice.
And let's just have 2 so we can see what's happening here.
I've got so many things going around in my mind how I could use these.
Right. Just by understanding these, you can get all kinds of cool effects. And I've got one plan that I want to play with in a bit, but let's do that. And it doesn't have to be that, right? So it could be the angles. So let's say we've got all our squares. Let's go back to a point. And let's say our angular velocity is going to be a curve texture. And let's go 0 and 360. And halfway through here, I'm just going to do that. And just to see what we're doing, let's do 2.
I like
right?
it.
Like playing with curves in particles is awesome. Like I really recommend it. You can do all kinds of cool stuff. All right, so let's carry down the moving things. I used to teach public speaking for a living. Linear velocity. This is just how far are you moving in one direction. Now, this is not the same as original velocity, which is changed by your direction. So let's say we're going to the right, and it's overriding our linear velocity. So honestly, linear velocity and initial velocity is always confusing. I usually just use linear velocity. Radial. Now, radial is a lot of fun. Radial pushes out. So let's say our direction is... nope, that's wrong. We need an initial velocity for this to work.
So if you had a few more particles, we should have seen it going out in a kind of spiral. Is that right?
It should be. It isn't. I want to see why not. This was working earlier. Radial velocity. So yeah, they should be spinning out. I think I've set something somewhere which is stopping it from doing that.
It's quite challenging when you've got an interface that
Yeah.
all looks the same. Everything looks the same. It's just something, and the naming's very, very similar all the way down here.
Oh, hang on. I have a curve texture here. Let's just make sure everything is out. No gravity. We don't need spread. We have 8 of them over a second. Let's do 2 seconds. And we'll do 4 for now. Okay.
Oh, so what you've got on the screen at the moment I think it's Alien, when they're landing on the planet, they have that kind of effect coming up on the ships.
From what I understand, the first particles actually came from a Star Trek movie with the Genesis probe.
Nice.
Yep. I'm going to be honest. I'm a little annoyed that that's not working. So let's just make a new particle, and I'll show you radials, because that's not a radial effect. New process material, particle material. Let's use squares again. There's reasons. Great. Gravity off. Radial acceleration, say 10. Why are you going up?
It will need an initial velocity as well, won't it? Otherwise, it's
probably. But oh, nope.
There we go.
I don't think so. I think that's just the initial velocity. It's weird. Okay, so radial's not working for some reason. I don't know why not. Let's ignore that for a minute. Tangential is they will spin. Oh, wait a minute. All right, we're at a point. That's why. All right, so this is quite fun, right? So they have no initial velocity, which is why radial hasn't that much effect. But check this out. You can also do negatives.
So it can be sucked inwards.
Or
sucked in at a certain rate, as if it's being sucked down a plug hole. Or a black hole.
Mm-hmm.
Nice.
And if I extend the time a little bit so we can see what we're doing, you should see it'll start coming in and then slow down and try and come back. So yeah, radial acceleration is a lot of fun. As well as radial acceleration, we have tangential acceleration. Tangential acceleration does this. They're going to try and spin out when they're finished. It's not quite the same as orbit, but they will counteract each other. We've also got damping, which is how much are we going to stop the movement. Now, when I use damping, I do it with a curve. So it won't damp at the beginning and it will at the end. All right, so we got those. We've got angle. Now, remember, we already played with an angle before. This is not how much the angle is moving. This is what's the angle when it spawns in. What you can do is if you do 360 and randomness at 1, and let's put this back to a point. Now, if you mix that in with angular acceleration, angular velocity rather.
And that's nice, of course, because if you've got something that's not a square, but a texture or a splat or dust or something along those lines, as will now be demonstrated.
Yep. So it's starting to look a lot more organic. Now, there's stuff we can do to make it look even better. And one of the things we can do to make it look even better, as we're here, is mess with the scale. So scale is 1, right? That's proportional. Obviously, the scale can be 0.5. The scale can be 10, right? Fine.
That's the
So
sun.
far, so good. We can also do random scale, but that's going to be quite hard to see at this scale, right? There's not much we can do with it. What we can do is this. We are going to start, let's say, half, go up to 1, stay there for most of the time, then drop to 0. And this stops doing its flickering thing that we saw before, right? And the reason for that is by the time the particle is dead, there's a bigger particle on top of it that's hiding it. You can do something very similar. Come back. Where'd you go? Stop that. You can do something very similar with color, right? So we could just change the color. Fine. Or we could go to the color ramp and make a new gradient.
That already looks pretty cool.
Right? Now, let's say that's white and that's white. This one is going to be white with no alpha. And this one is going to be white with no alpha. Or maybe they're not white. Maybe we're going to go between colors.
Nice.
So there's already a lot we can do with these. And those are the basic ones. So there's one more you can do, which is hue variation. Think of this as color, but you have less control. Like you're not picking a specific color, you're just picking the hue. And that's just going to, well, if I do 1, we've got all the way around the cycle. Let's put it on random.
Roderick says the initial gradient looked like some sort of serious nightmare stuff. Yeah, the black one could easily fit into a lot of horror movies. The way it has an effect, doesn't it?
And interestingly with black, one other thing we can do is we can change how the material is drawn. Right now we're just overlaying it, right? But what happens if we let's change to a ramp? I'm going to go from wait, no, that's a hue variation ramp. Let's go to our gradient, make a new gradient. There we go. So we're going from black to white, right? Now, if I go to materials, which is under canvas item, and I do a new canvas item thing, I could change from mix to add. And now what it's doing is it's taking the values and superimposing them. But when you do that, black is 0. So if I get rid of that ramp and make this color black, it vanishes. So this is a great way of dealing with alphas and things, but it's also a really great way to make things feel a lot more vibrant, I guess would be the word. So let's go to an energy hoop thing.
Look into my eyes, not around the eyes, but in the eyes.
Oh boy, that was painful. All right. Let's just get rid of the angles. That's not what that looks like. Just make sure I'm not spreading stupid. All right. Oh, it's because they're adding on top of each other. All right, let's do circles. Great. We'll do circles, and we're just going to make them radiate out. Right, so let's go to radial, and we'll say 50. And that needs to be a sphere. So let's go to our sphere. There we go. So if this is just a normal mix, that's what that's going to look like. So let's pick a color for it. Let's say it's nice yellow, mustard color, fine. And then if I add it, where they overlap, they're going to start getting brighter. And this starts looking a lot more plasmatic, right? A lot more organic, because you can actually see the colors clump together. Once again, put it like that. And it's just yellow dots. Put in the add, and you get this magic effect. So when you want that, that's how you do it. Now, you don't always want that. So with all those stuff together, I think that was all the ones I wanted to look at. Let's start. Oh, and you can also use the animation right here. I don't have any sprite sheets. I'm not going to be doing that. But if you're using a sprite sheet or an atlas, that's what you can do.
I could see making an explosion with this as well.
Oh, yeah, easy. But I want to make something a little unusual. All right, let's make a high-tech thing. So let's make a new particle 2D. And let's just have 4 particles. And I need a new process material. And I've got this nice text circle. So I'm going to go to textures and bring in my nice text circle. This is from a GIMP brush of tech effects that I bought a few years back. You can actually use it for free. I don't have it listed, so I'm glad I bought it. And let's turn off our gravity. Okay, so it's just a very basic thing, right? So some things we can do. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go down to our material, put in the canvas item, and I want this to actually add it. Now, with just white on white, you're not going to notice. So let's go to our color, and let's pick a slightly more greeny color, and you'll notice it's still white. Again,
because of the
values
adding,
are being
right?
added. You can't get higher than 1. 1 is white, right? Well, actually, we're adding 1, 1, and 1. Red, green, and blue. You're getting white. Okay, so now let's go and go to angular velocity. And we're going to say you got an angular velocity of 360. That is fully random. Let's make this a little easier to see what we're doing. Let's say I want my background color or my clear color. Oops, there we go. Clear color. Let's put that as black just so we can see what we're doing. So we already have a nice little computer effect. Now there's things we can do to make this better, right? Let's just have 2 for now. And we've got this little lens effect happening. Let's say we don't want that kind of time. Let's say we want a 4-second one. And maybe the angular velocity is too fast. Let's just put it as 90.
I like that.
Right? And then we go to the angle, and we'll say we're going to start at 360 degrees from our normal starting point. Can't see any difference, but that's okay because we can go over here. Now, this image is very blocky, right? I just made a very small thing with a brush using a pencil tool. So it doesn't look great, but already we're starting to get some cool stuff. But what if we don't just have this color? Let's go to our gradients and the new gradient, and you'll notice it's fading in because it's starting at black. Let's say we don't want to start at black. Let's say we're going to start at a dark green, and I'm going to come up to a sort of teal color. Right? So just by having a little thing and saying, I want this kind of camera random lens effect, and saying, well, okay, so what's that involved? I've got my image. I only need a couple of them. I'm going to overlay them so that they are semi-transparent. And that's what we're going to do. And then it's just, I need an angular velocity. I'm going to put some randomness in it, an angle, put some randomness in it, maybe a little color variant, and then just put this on add. How does it look on mix? Dull. Right? All the magic's gone. But with add, we're getting a lot of that interplay. But maybe we're not doing this in tech. Maybe.
Oh, you just made Stargate. You have literally just made a Stargate. Nice.
Right?
Just
and right now it's randomized, so it's got to speed up and slow down and stuff. And there's all kinds of other stuff you can do.
If you got some of those hieroglyphs or symbols, or maybe some sort of Nordic symbology, you know, those going around there as well, that would look absolutely amazing.
Yep. But yeah, it's just, you know, this is just an abstract brush I found. Or let's try this one.
Look into
that one doesn't look quite as good. That's off center. And it's interesting because these aren't regular shapes, the illusion doesn't work, right? But if we do something like this,
yes, it does work when you've got symmetry.
Right.
It's probably symmetry it boils down to.
Because we're randomly rotating. So that's a nice little sort of cybernetic effect. Let's make something different. You said you wanted an explosion, Mikey.
Yeah, I like blowing up things.
Let's stick with 2D for now. And I need my new particles material and new texture. Oh, one thing, by the way, normal map. You can put in normals and have lighting and have the texture play with it. Let's start with something simple. Let's go with a smudgy circle. And I'm going to turn off gravity because I don't want gravity. And let's say I want lots and lots of these. I'm going to do 256, and I'm just going to come out. Now, right now, we just have our sun. Great. Let's go to radial, and I want maximum thing. And it's not happening because I need to go to emission shape and go to sphere. Now, if I widen that to beyond the size of the circle, I think the circle is 128, it starts looking a bit more like a sun, right? Now, let's put in a little bit of movement.
Starting to look very much like a thruster at this point.
I was just thinking that, right? Okay, so we have our radial acceleration, and we can make that a little less thingy. But this isn't an explosion, right? This is like a sun. In fact, let's make it even more so. We're going to use our canvas item trick and go to add. I'm going to go to color, and we want a color ramp, new gradient. I'm going to start at a sort of red. I'm going to come up to a sort of that. That actually is a terrible color. And we'll come down to a sort of orange. Yeah, that's fine.
Nice.
So we have ourselves a sun, but we don't want a sun. We want an explosion. And for that, we're going to go all the way to the top. I'm going to go to time. And I'm going to turn explosiveness to 1. Now, these are too big. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to my scale. And just turn the particle size down. Okay, so right now it's not quite working. Let's turn the
a longer life, yeah.
But even that doesn't work, right? So if I do this as a one shot, that's not really an explosion. Run that. So things we can do. Let's take it off one shot for now so we can see it running. We can go over to our radial. Let's turn that off and give it a curve. And we're going to have our minimum at 0, our maximum at 200. And I'm going to go to here and just go, and then have it damp down again, right? And this is a Bezier curve, so we can tweak how
if you
goes.
ramp it up very quickly at the beginning, it'll have that bang effect.
Well, in fact, we don't need to do that. We could just, there we go. Remove that point.
Nice.
Okay, so that's working, but we have a problem, right? It's just coming to an end. So let's go over to our orange at the end here.
There we go. It's fading out.
And now let's go back to our lifetime. Actually, let's not go to lifetime. Let's go speed scale.
Set it to 6 or 8.
6 seconds. Oh, you mean 6 times the speed?
Yeah, I want a really big boom.
To do that, what we could do, let's go to our curve.
Ah, yes, of course.
Now you'll notice they're all on one big ring. Let's go to explosiveness and turn it down to 0.75.
Oh.
Yeah. And let's also put in some randomness on the lifetime.
And probably them all starting at the same time for an explosion.
More or less. Like this feels more like a jump drive, right? But if we go to 0.9, yeah. Or maybe we don't want that. Maybe we want it back like this as a one shot. I don't think this looks like an explosion. Yeah.
Roderick has said another Stargate show confirmed when we were working on it. Render,
I'm a big fan of
Render.
Stargate Universe. I don't care what the fans say. I love that show. And I know everyone's going, it's not original Stargate. I know. They tried to make Battlestar, but it was still a fun show.
It was. Render says he's getting Spirograph vibes from some.
Yeah. It's very much like playing with Spirograph. That's a great one.
Am I dating myself with that reference? Possibly.
Could be. I think we can actually make this look a little bit more interesting.
Of course, you can extend. I love that about Bezier curves.
Right.
So one thing to obviously to bear in mind in here is a lot of these values that go from 0 to 1, I presume, are just the beginning of the particle system and the end of the particle system. Its lifespan, essentially.
Yeah, I mean, we could go to negative 600 and do this. In fact, because they're accelerating, that's not going to work. So let's drop you down to here and drop you down to here. And let's have our minimum value of minus 1200. Okay, that's our maximum. So bring that in, and we should see it start pulling back in at the end.
Yes. Nice.
So what happens if we do this?
Todd has got a challenge for you. Make a game only using particles as your art.
Yeah, no, that'd be good. I'm not doing that right now. We have 24 minutes. That sounds like a really fun thing to do for a game jam, to be honest. So our problem there is that you're not going to have any kind of collision. Now, Godot 4 does have collision particles, although they don't work in the same way as physics collision. So that's the thing we can do. So we have ourselves a fairly standard-looking explosion. Let's make it look a bit more interesting. Are we using... We are using that. Great.
Particles are also probably a ton more expensive than a shader.
Oh, yeah. But you can have shader particles, of course.
Dun, dun, dun.
So now, let's just get rid of that entirely.
Roderick has said Stargate Universe had greatest potential, but was ended too
Oh,
soon.
yeah. It was ended much too soon. And to be honest, the hardcore fan base just didn't like it because that's not the show they signed up for. They signed up for another Stargate Atlantis and they didn't get it. And I get that. Like, that's... The creators took a risk and they alienated a lot of their fans. But let's make ourselves a little sun.
Roderick also says 24 minutes is all you need. We believe in you.
I'm glad someone does, because I don't. Not about that. Okay, so that's way too many.
That looks like GTA's loading screen.
All right, so what have we got here? We've got the exact same thing, but I've gotten rid of the radial acceleration. Actually, I haven't because it's still a curve there. Let's get rid of it. And I've just got them spawning in over a thing with over a radius with a color ramp. And because they're added together, you're getting a really cool effect. If they're not added together, if they're just mixed, it doesn't look anywhere near as interesting.
No, it doesn't.
But once we start doing that, we start getting really ethereal effects, which I really enjoy. And this color scheme is quite evocative of that. But we could...
It's like a wisp, isn't it?
Let's go toxic. All right. Let's make a different thing. What should we make?
GTA 6 Particles Only Edition.
Hi, Todd. Let's make it something we'd actually make. Because even Rockstar couldn't make GTA 6 in 24 minutes. 14 years.
You should see someone about that cough. It seems to be lasting a long time.
It's a long time. All right, let's do some magic. For this, I'm going to take something a bit weirder. Let's take an abstract thing I made. I found these brushes and I use them. Abstract circles. Nope, let's go with blob. Yes. All right. Mikey, you mentioned stargates. Let's make a magical stargate. So enter particles, and I don't want gravity. Sometimes you don't want gravity. I almost never want it. So first thing to do is turn it off. This is quite a big image, so I'm going to scale it down. And I'm going to want... We'll start with 8. It's fine. I'm going to do a 4-second particle. Right now, nothing is happening. Nobody cares. That's fine. Let's go to our angle. 360 with maximum randomness. In fact, that's too small. There we go. Okay, so we have that. Now let's go angular velocity 90, randomized.
The Mad Tinkerer has said everybody's talking about the Godot 4 Uber shader, but let's not forget about the Uber particles.
The Uber particles are pretty good, although given the trouble that Uber's in right now, maybe we shouldn't. Womp
womp.
Thank you. All right. I'm going to give this color. Actually, I'm going to give it a color ramp. I like color ramps. And let's go a little bit magical. Let's go. What are magical colors? Purple is the color of magic. That's not purple. That's purple. There we go. And fading into. I should pick the color here. All right. So as you can see, what we have right now is what is a happy little accident, right? So how can we make this better? Well, first thing we can do is our canvas item trick. So down to material, canvas item, add. Okay, but not what we're looking for. So let's go to, let's do some alpha trick. So I'm going to drag this one over here, add a new key, and make that alpha 0. Oh, I just moved it to the wrong place. No, you live here. A new key here. Make you nice and propely.
Of course, it's one of the things when dealing with anything that's adding, getting to white, it only takes a few particles, so you can very easily end up with a big white blob if we're not careful.
In fact, I'm not enjoying the colors I picked, so let's just do that. Actually, you know what we should do? We should go back to purple.
Todd has also said, Bob Ross, particles only edition.
Okay, so we have some happy little bushes. All right. So far, we've got something that looks a little bit dreamy, but not what we're looking for. So let's go into our scales, make a scale curve. Add a point here and here by right-clicking. Go zip and zip. And I think our angular velocity needs to be much higher.
I mean, it doesn't have the shape of, but before you started changing these settings and putting that curve in, it reminded me a lot of the portals in Valheim.
Mm. Yep. I can see that. Okay. Let's do some fun stuff. Let's go to emission shape and do a sphere that is 32 pixels wide. Is that wide enough? No. 128. Too wide. 64. Great. Let's give it a little bit of tangential acceleration. That's not enough. I don't mean tangential, I mean radial. In fact, you know what? Let's not do that. Let's go minus 100, minus 50.
Ooh. So this feels like a very a process that you just have to go over and over, iterating through everything and just seeing what you get from it.
Yep, very much so. And let's do a bit of lifetime randomness. And let's say slight explosiveness. No. So what I'm not liking right now is the big white gap in the middle. Now we could, instead of going to add, we could go to subtract. But we're on a black background, we're not going to see anything, so that's silly.
Could you add another particle system right on top to...
Basically what I was about to say, yeah. So let's make a black blob particle. Boop. Now, I want black. So what is it we're not going to do? We're not going to add the colors together. So new particle, I need a texture. I think we do...
So what determines the layer here? Does it have to be above the other one in the node stack? In the
we can change random priority, but whenever you're using a scene tree like this, imagine you're standing here at the bottom.
Yep.
Looking this way.
So whatever's at the bottom comes last, basically.
I believe so. Yeah. Now, we can't see it. Why can't we see it? Because it's white on white. Fine. Move.
Oh, that looks horribly ominous. Yeah, when I say horrible at this point, I don't mean it looks horrible.
Oh, I know. Let's turn gravity off. And I need to change the scale on this. So let's go 0.5.
Oh, someone's got to make a black hole particle system.
All right. New curve. And we're going to go minus 100 to 100. So we're just going to... and this needs to be a sphere, doesn't it? So let's go to the mission shape.
This is starting to look like an evil spell.
But I want this to look a lot more circular.
Nice.
All right. It's flickering. A couple of ways we can solve flickering. Mikey, can you give me a couple of ways we can solve flickering?
You ask Jan to do it. It's the first one because I've seen him. He's done it
we've
before
talked a couple of times.
So we can zoom things in and out at the beginning, or fade them in and out with a color ramp.
Correct. So let's do that. Let's go to a color ramp. You gradient color. You gradient.
Seahorse heads. Yes, I can see the seahorse heads.
And I'm just going to bring the alpha down on that. And let's bring the alpha in as well. Now it looks like I've got some explosiveness going on there, which I did not mean to. Oh no, it's the render priority, which is under... Where's render priority? It's under drawing, I think. Nope. I did know this one.
Is it for that white shimmer that happens over the top of it?
Mm-hmm.
I think that adds to it, but yeah.
I mean, yeah, but it's nice to do that on purpose.
Is it under the visibility, under the canvas item area?
Don't think so. Okay, so show behind parent, it just makes the parent come in first, right? So we don't want that. But around here somewhere is a render priority. Oh, wait. Should be right here.
Yes,
there we go. Yeah, it's still not doing it. Okay, that's fine. What I could do is I could go here and do the render priority at -1. Would that work? No. Basically, there's too many of these white particles on top. But this is not a Stargate, which is what I wanted. So let's do some changes. Meow, 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 meow. Whoop. How's that?
Ooh.
I mean, it's just, with just a couple of changes, you can start getting really cool effects. Oh, I know why this is doing that. I think I do know why it's doing that. We know our color ramp. This is white alpha.
Oh, interesting.
Or black alpha. Because it's actually ramping from black to white with an alpha of 0.
So you've got that little area of crossfade.
Now, because we're using a ring, if we remove it, it actually doesn't work as well, right? But having that in the middle really helps. Now, maybe we don't want that to be that kind of particle, right? Maybe it's just going to stay there in the center. And to do that, we could just get rid of our radial acceleration entirely. And
just make that particle bigger as well, couldn't we, to take up more space?
Make that particle bigger, and we should make this a point. But with this as a point, it looks really inorganic. Everything around it is flowing, and there's just this dead spot. And that's kind of what we want to avoid, right? We don't want just a little static point. If this is all going to be moving and flowing, let's have it all moving. So I don't know. I'm quite happy with that. But let's, I don't know. Mikey, what's your favorite color?
I'm not 5. I don't have one, but green. Hello, good evening, Daz.
Hey Daz. Where's my approval? I can't see it. There it is. There we go. Lovely green portal. Now, because we're dealing with added colors, I'm just going to make that nice and simple. Now, I find that a little bit too neon because it's just one color fading in and out, but that's an effect you can make. Okay, let's make a different kind of particle. Let's go 3D.
Oh.
I don't know why I've got two empty scenes. And we're going to make a particle 3D. Particles, as it's called here. All right, so this is broadly the same. We need a new particles material, but we don't have a texture. And the reason for that is we're making geometry. So if we go to our pass 1, we can pick our mesh type. Now, what I tend to do is I'll pick a quad mesh. And then when I put the material in, there's a few things we can do. So I'll show you what I normally do first. And then I'll show you something fun you can do just with 3D. So let's go into our spatial material. And under flags, we can do unshaded, for example. That's fine. But we want, I'm not parameters, not flags. Billboard mode, particle billboard. And what that's doing is wherever the camera is, that texture is being pointed to. Now, this is important. Don't do normal Y billboard because all of the rotation and stuff that the particle does won't work. It'll just be stuck as an image. And you'll get some really weird examples. Enabled, same problem, right? Except you'll think it's working because it's looking at you, but it won't rotate. It won't do all that stuff. So we need a particle billboard. And then from here, we can do things like turn gravity off, which is a thing I like to do. That's not under materials, though. Oh, wait. Let's put on transparent and unshaded. And under albedo, let's do our energy hoop again. And one more thing we want to do that's quite important. I want to control the color in the particles, not here. So I'm just going to go use as albedo. And now, why are you? Oh, because I'm looking sideways. Now when I go into the particles and I do gravity. And we have a 3D environment, it's just a little hard to see. Actually, let's go back to now to our 3D material. I don't want to do unshaded, but under parameters again, I could change this to add. That's how you do it there. You could also do unshaded. Unshaded and add is just not going to work as a combination. Everything will be white. Like, it's just not going to work. So if we wanted to recreate what we just did, we could do so. But let's make something a little more unusual, right? So I've just showed you, here's how we could recreate it. So we could just go back into the sphere projection and the rotation, like all of those parameters are the same. But what if we have a brand new particle material and our brand new pass is a cube? Specifically a cube of not 2 by 2 by 2. Now you'll notice values of 2 in the 2D thing are imperceptible, but here they're huge. Why? Because in 3D, that's 2 meters by 2 meters by 2 meters, which is roughly like the height of a person. So let's go 0.25 in all 3 directions. And we don't need any kind of material for now, but actually let's make material. Use special material.
Is that a CSV?
Nope, that's a mesh. That's a mesh instance.
So you could bring anything in.
Yep.
Should send you over Suzanne the monkey.
Yeah. Well, it can show you something very cool that I've got over in battle tactics. But I'll show you that in a bit if we have time.
Awesome.
All right. So parameters. I don't want to add on this one, but I do want to go to. I don't mean parameters. I mean vertex color uses albedo. So I want to control the color over in our thing. Right now, everything is slightly blue. That's because the sky is blue and we're using sky as the light. So if you want to change that, you'll need a new environment. So let's just put one in real quick.
It's a common complaint of Godot, isn't it?
Yep. And I'm just going to give it white ambient light, right? Pretty ugly, but there we go. We have white blocks falling. I don't want them falling. Great. So here we have our block.
Daz says 2 meters. That's a particle like a wheelie bin flying around.
Yep. All right. So let's actually, you know what? No, I'm complicating things. All right, so we have ourselves a little particle, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to give it a emission shape. I'm not going to use sphere this time, I'm going to use box. And I'm going to have quite a small thing, right? So this is 25 centimeters of the size of the box. Let's do 20 centimeters as our emission cube. And let's give ourselves a radial acceleration
Ooh.
of 10. But let's also give ourselves a direction. Actually, let's come back to radial acceleration, just so I can see what I'm doing here. No. There we go. That's way too fast. That's a little slow.
Oh, if you do a few of these on top of one another, you've got yourself a low poly campfire.
Yep. By the way, I've got everything in pure white ambient light, so it's really hard to see what we're doing. So let's give ourselves a nice gray ambient light and an omni light.
Roderick wants to see 1,000 of them. Way!
Your wish has been granted. I mean, I don't know what you're going to do with 1,000 of them, but it's 1,000. Let's put it back to 8 for now. All right, so now I've got a nice dark ambient light, so we can see the shadow of a single omni light in pure white, which is making the lighting designer really angry. But we have it, and let's just go over here and give ourselves a little bit of backlight in a different color. We're not worrying about shadows. Okay, so what are we making here? We are making an explosion. Let's have a lifetime randomness. And let's have 256 of these. Way too many. 64. And let's change our angle. So our angle is going to be 360 with a 1 degree thing. Or with maximum randomness. And for some reason that's not showing.
While you're playing with that, we've got a question from Daz. Out of curiosity, as it comes to mind, can you couple particles with geonodes? So this is one for me. So, yes, kind of. I mean, you can do particle systems in geometry nodes themselves, pretty much. So it's kind of taken over some of that. But obviously, when it comes to particle systems in their original use, they would often be used for something like smoke and water and fluid simulations, which I've seen some incredibly clever people do in geometry nodes, but still probably the domain of a particle system for the moment. But you can certainly combine them in various ways.
I just realized this wasn't working. I am rotating on one face. So I'm doing angles. It's like, why isn't it working? Because I don't have that there. Okay, here we go. Boop, boop, boop. There we go. That's what I'm trying to do. Great. So now I've got my angles, 360 with a 1 thing random. There we go. And I just want to rotate on the Y. Let's give it a 2-second thing. And let's go to our scale. Give it a curve. Start about 0.5, end at 0.
It just fades out.
Now, maybe we don't want them going up, so let's get rid of our initial velocity. But now we've got tangential, we need radial. So let's go 10. 5. And let's make. There we go. We now have a little retro game style explosion.
Oh, I love it. I've got a question from Flame Lizard 21. Hey there. Do you know if it's possible to spawn particles from the mesh of a character? Not sure if that's possible in Godot currently.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is.
Absolutely. So that shape that you were defining earlier, whether it was sphere or cube, is there Is that where you do it?
Yep. I will show you in just a second because that was exactly what I was talking about. All right, so we have a basic red thing, but you'll notice it's not looking red. Why? Because we're using local lighting. So let's go to parameters, and we can either do add, or we can go into flags and do unshaded. So yeah, you're making a little retro game and you want an explosion. You could do 3D things. Let's take a look at actually.
Roderick also says nice Minecraft explosion.
Exactly. That was my technique. Don't save. Hot code. Don't at me, bro. All right. If I go to attach flaming devil, this is an attachment you can have. And we've got this fire particle, right? These are just quads, a little thing, make it fire. But if you look at it, it's actually got a shape. So what I've done here is I've told it follow the mesh to make a shape. So let's take a look at how that works. So I'll go back to the other project. And let's pick a 3D scene. And I know we're coming up to the hour, so start lining up any more questions we've got because I like them. Let's make a mesh instance. And what should we have? Let's have, I don't know, a sphere? Let's have a sphere.
Sphere is a good shape.
All right. I'm going to call this shape. And I want my particles. And right now we can't see anything because, well, there's nothing to see. So let's make a new process material, new particle material, new draw pass, and we'll just make it nice and easy. So quad shape.
The Mad Tinkerer has, well, he realised he's commenting on something from half an hour ago. But you could have collision shapes if they're invisible. Well, collision shapes themselves are invisible. So in theory, you could make a game and have collision happening.
You would have to track it in code. Are these two things in the same position as opposed to have they collided? So you basically have to fake collision. All right, so I'm just going to give myself a nice little addition, and let's give it an albedo as well, just so show what we're doing. So let's go with circles. I'm going to make a nice little fire effect, right? So in my particles, let's start with gravity because it's traditional. There we go, much more like it. I didn't put particle billboard on, did I? That was silly of me. Particles, material. There we go, particle billboard. Awesome. Let's give it a color. Color ramp. Just make it nice and simple. Vividity. No, that's hue variation. Not what I want at all in any way. There we go. So let's start with a nice dark red with lots of alpha in it. Into sort of brighter red. Into sort of orangey yellow. Into yellow with lots of alpha. And let's go to scale. Give it a curve. Give it a nice flame-like scale. So we'll start down here. Go here. We're going to drop down a bit. And then drop down much faster. But we don't need that much at all. And finally, let's give it our... Yeah, we do want direction, don't we? We're going to move heading up. Say we have a 20-degree thing and an initial velocity of 10. Hello? That was unexpected. What did I do there? Okay, so that's not what I'm trying to do. I mean, I kind of enjoy it, but I feel like I just broke something. One. Oh, it's too fast. Great. Let's go one. All right, this is one time I do want unshaded. So let's scroll back down. All right, we have unshaded added flames. And to make this really work, let's have lots of them. And I'm going to move it back to 0, 0, 0.
That's nice. I like that.
Okay,
effect.
so the question is, can you have the mesh emitting from a certain point? You can. What I'm going to do, I'm going to do this mesh, and I'm going to do, actually it's not under mesh, it's under particles. Create emissions from node. Now, if it wasn't in the scene, I could just do it from a mesh in my file system. I just want to go from the shape.
And now the shape is on fire. Nice.
And it can be any mesh. Now, one thing you should know, it's not going to change those at runtime, right? That emission point is fixed. So if your mesh is animated, it won't follow the animation. So you could do each body part if they're individual, or you could do a static thing that isn't expected to move. But if there's a lot of key shapes or anything like that, it's not going to work. But we could make this a lot more interesting, right? We could go...
You've just answered Flame Lizard's other question. Perfect.
Great. What was it?
Could you basically do a skinned mesh, so an animated mesh?
Not really. Now, weirdly, the particle's looking great, but that shape doesn't work, does it?
So if you moved around,
it looks like a cube.
If you just moved around that cube, that's definitely a sphere. Can you? Would the particles follow it? The actual base.
They can do.
The base shape.
If I make him a child of it, yeah.
So that's one possibility to answer the question of whether or not they could follow along.
Well, they won't follow the actual rigging.
No.
Right? So if the mesh changes, like if you've got a skinned mesh that's following a rig, the particles will stay the same shape. So you've made a flaming person, you've imported a rigged mesh from Blender or wherever else, or Mixamo, and you've run an animation and the mesh is moving with the rig, the particles won't move. So unless you've got a bunch of individual pieces that are bound to parts of that mesh, I don't think there's a way of doing that. By the way, a way of making what we just did look better, we go to our particles. Let's go to drawing, which is at the top here. There it is. Switch off local coordinates and move our shape. Now, there are better ways of making a fire. This is a very rough and ready way of doing it. One thing we do is not use a circle, but you get the idea. And let's just find a nice little smudgy one. And that doesn't look like...
Doesn't look like it's got an alpha channel. There we go.
There we go.
Looks almost like steam. Like you just put out the fire.
There we are. Okay. But I don't want them looking quite so thingamy, so I'm going to go over to my angle.
Yeah, they were a bit uniform, weren't they?
Mm-hmm. I mean, it's still pretty uniform, but yeah, that's my quick little look into how to thingamy.
Make a fire.
How to particle. Any questions, comments, thoughts, concerns? Jingles or interpretive dances? I'm gonna stop sharing my screen for a bit.
Gotta wake up. Great stream. No, that I mean, particles are awesome. They really are.
They're a lot of fun and they're really worth playing with. And honestly, what I like to do is just sit there and play with the different parameters and make some stuff.
Oh, so many hours can pass doing that.
Yeah, just make a couple of shapes in Blender. I mean, the stuff you can do just with basic squares is so much fun. A couple of blobs, a couple of smear effects. Get Kenny's particle pack. Download some brushes from DeviantArt for Photoshop or GIMP and just play with those shapes. Like you can do all kinds of stuff. Or use meshes. Like there's all, you know, you can do really cool stuff. You can make laser beams. You can make steam. Like there's a lot of really cool stuff you can do with this. Yeah, I feel like I should open YouTube and look at the comments, and I'm going to be doing no thingamies.
I think we're on top of them at the moment.
Good. I should hope so. Hello, Hello, everybody. Yeah, no, I could also spend 1 to 2 hours doing this. But on the other hand, it means when you start making a game, like making battle tactics, you think, I want this effect. I want a flaming character, right? I know that the way my character is animated, the mesh isn't going to be deformed by a rig. So it's much easier just to say, well, it's just a capsule. I'll use that as my emission point.
I'll set him on fire.
Exactly. That sounds amazing, Tinkerer.
Yeah, in the mid-90s when 3D was just a twinkle in the graphic artist's eye.
I mean, we already had 2.5D, and vector graphics have been around for a while with games like Elite, the original.
Oh, particles, though, bring old hardware down to its knees.
I mean, yeah.
Or to its knees. Down to its knees? Here's your knees.
So we do have, I'm going to do a little bit of shilling. We do have a particle pack, a particle assets pack that's available for Godot 3 on our site, which you're welcome to check out. I can't remember if we sell it or if it's free. I know it's one of those two. I think we gave it away for free or something.
I'm going to go look it up and post the link while you're...
I can't remember. But play with particles. They're awesome. There's all kinds of stuff you can do. And in Godot 4, there's things like collision particles. There's sub-emitters. So once it's finished emitting a particle, it'll emit a second one. And it'll say, do you want to emit it from where that particle was? Yes or no? Like, there's really cool things you can do. So play with them. That's my advice.
Here we go.
Sorry. It's hot. I'm winding down.
It's very hot. Hey, I've reached 29 degrees C. I don't know why I'm pleased about that. It's slowly been creeping up, and it was when I posted in the chat earlier, it was 28.9. But it's not really something to celebrate. Oh, so warm. Right, I think this is the right page. Yeah.
It would look really cool this time. I mean, this is just past the time where all graphics tests were a teapot.
Right.
They were.
I wondered why when I was younger. Why is this teapot everywhere?
Because the people who were first working with these algorithms wanted to render something that was reasonably simple but had some subtlety to it, and so they just memorized the formula to make a teapot. And every time they did a test, they just wrote that in. Yeah. So there's our particles pack, which is it's a free pack. I thought so. So download them into Godot, play with them. There's some fun things in there. I quite enjoy it.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well,
I mean, I've got my evaporative cooler on my desk, but it can only do so much in this heat.
Humidify your room.
It's helping, but... Does Godot have any hard limits on the number of particles you can render at once? I don't know about hard limits. I know about hardware limits. For example, Battle Tactics doesn't run on my laptop. Like, it'll run, but it's unplayable. And I think a lot of that is because of the amount of particles we have. We have a lot of particles going on there.
I am so I was chatting the other week. I was thinking of getting a cooler box, a polystyrene cooler box, and basically putting some computer fans at one end and an elbow joint, I think it's called, a 90-degree PVC UPVC pipe, and then just filling it up with ice and letting air go through there and come out and cool down.
I mean, that's what an evaporative cooler is. I mean, I've got this little one on my desk, which is basically a paper filter that brings water up and the fan blows it through.
Ice is colder than water. I did science.
Yes, it is. And the bigger ones of these you can fill with ice for that very reason. But it's the actual evaporating takes energy, so it cools the room down. I believe it'll let you bring the PC to his knees. I actually don't know.
There'll be some limit. I can't chime in on that. I wouldn't know what the actual engine.
I mean, there will be some kind of hard limit because there's a point where it's like I can't do a bigger integer. But I don't know. I generally don't know. I've not found it yet. But while particles are not that expensive, they will eventually bring at least older computers down.
Yeah. I suppose that the best answer to that is you need to test it on your end hardware. Because if you're developing for a mobile platform, it's going to be completely different than if you're developing for the latest series of consoles or a PC.
Yeah, absolutely. And test it in its exported form. Not
Was
in its,
was it particles we had an issue with on AMD systems?
No, it was anti-aliasing.
I was anti-aliasing. Okay.
Because GLES 3 didn't play nice with anti-aliasing with AMD systems.
Yeah. That was when we were playing around with Mag Racer. But yeah, I mean, this is the sort of thing that you could potentially implement with all games. We've seen campfires, we've seen explosions.
Nice tricks I would do. I mean, we did this when we were doing the prototype for the God of War action RPG, which we'll be going back to very soon. You get your spell, and you have, a rigid body or whatever it is with a particle in it that's going to be moving. You put a light inside it. You have the spell elements adding their colors. You go down to geometry and you disable cast shadows.
Mm-hmm.
Then you switch to shadows on the light.
Yeah.
So the particles look like the light source, and it's really cool.
That is awesome. Oh, especially, and they emit light into the world and interact with the global illumination system. That means you're going to be able to literally create a wisp in the wood and have it fly through. That's awesome.
Yeah. There's all kinds of amazing things you can do.
I love it. Coming soon to a Godot near you.
I can't remember if I didn't. I was going to put particles in the voids demo we did. It was like, well, the voids already look like particles. Putting particles on them is just showing off. At that
particles
point.
On particles.
Yeah. Which you can do. So yeah, I think that brings us to the end of my little segment.
That was awesome. I really enjoyed that, and I hope you guys did
too.
Yeah, awesome.
So yeah, thank you for joining us. If you have any more comments, concerns, and things, you should share them on our Discord or go to Mikey's house and bother him. It's hot. I'm not being bothered.
Yes, find the passed out person, which is exactly what we need to go do now. I was going to ask if you'd been playing any games, but what I found at the moment is using games on my computer or doing any rendering. I'm like, need to leave the room.
Sitting in this room, okay, I have one small window over here and big thick stone walls, right? It's quite a small room, and I've got padding here, which insulates. Running my graphics card, I have to do it at night. That's the only chance.
And even then, it's not been pleasant at night recently. Anyway, we won't bore you anymore about our temperatures,
our hotness.
Well, hello.
Thank you so much for joining us. I hope you had fun. Go play with particles. They're awesome. Just sit there and play with them. Like, you can make incredible things. Download some free things from Kenny and just have fun. But yeah, drive safe. Don't forget to tip your waitress.
Wear sunscreen.
Drink at the bar.
Especially
don't tie your shoelace in a revolving door.
I'll do. Just make sure someone's videoing at the time.
I hope I survive my hotness too. So yeah, I think that's it. Unless you have any last minute.
Oh, there was one thing. Bye.
Bye.
See you next week.
Bye. Press it. Press it.